This campaign is about the future, not rumors, not sleaze, and I care about the sanctity of this process, whether you do or do not.
It's Sunday Morning on CBS, and here again is Lee Cowan.
Back in 1988, presidential candidate Gary Hart seemed to have the White House in sight. What happened next, however, is a cautionary tale and the subject of a brand new movie starring Hugh Jackman. Rita Braver has our Sunday profile.
You have had quite an eventful life.
Oh, boy. Yes, I think that may be the understatement of the day. Much, much more eventful than I ever anticipated.
And when we met up with former Senator Gary Hart in Evergreen, Colorado, just a few miles from his home.
5 miles back that way, in a town called Kittredge.
We talked about some of the most tumultuous events as depicted in a new film that looks back to May 1987.
I came here to talk to you about America's future.
When Gary Hart's presidential campaign was infamously derailed.
If we lose this, we can kiss the White House goodbye.
What's it been like for you to have all this focus on that time?
Very strange. Imagine, out of the blue, somebody came to you and said, there's good news and bad news. We want to make a movie about you, but we want to make it about the worst week of your life.
Did I do anything immoral? I absolutely did not.
It was the week that reporters from the Miami Herald, acting on a tip, staked out Hart's D.C. home and saw him meeting with a young woman named Donna Rice.
I want to ask you some questions about the woman at your townhouse.
While his wife was out of town.
The only thing I deny is the idea that
Hart, played in the movie by Hugh Jackman, spotted the reporters and confronted them.
I know full well what my responsibilities are. Do you know yours?
That Sunday, the Herald would publish a story that also reported that Hart and Rice had previously been together in Bimini on a boat called Monkey Business.
These pictures, shot by a vacationing businessman, show a relaxed senator on the now famous yacht Monkey Business.
Both Hart and Rice have always denied any sexual relationship, but the frenzy of media coverage forced Gary Hart to withdraw from the race.
I refuse to submit my family and my friends and innocent people and myself to further rumors and gossip.
I also said, if we go down the path we've started this week, we will get the kind of leaders we deserve.
Have we?
Yes. You can't have the rules that were applied to me applied to American politics and get people of quality.
Gary Hart grew up in Ottawa, Kansas, graduated Yale Law School, and settled in Colorado with his wife, Lee. But drawn to public service by President Kennedy, he ended up managing George McGovern's losing 1972 presidential race. Hart went back to Colorado, won a U.S. Senate seat, and built a distinguished career.
Well, I don't think caution is what this country needs.
By 1983,
you got to run for president. We need new leadership. And that's the phrase I heard over and over again.
You would aggressively seek an attempt at dialogue with Castro.
I would challenge him to join us.
But in 1984, Hart lost the Democratic nomination to former Vice President Walter Mondale.
When I hear your new ideas, I'm reminded of that ad. Where's the beef?
Yeah.
Hart became the Democratic frontrunner for 1988, in large part because of his visionary ideas.
I saw, as early as anyone else, the shift of the economic base of America from manufacturing to information and technology, symbolically from Detroit to Silicon Valley.
You actually worried that we were heading toward a war in the Persian Gulf and that nobody was trying to defuse the situation, especially vis-a-vis terrorism.
Or reduce our dependence on oil. So it meant conservation, it meant alternative renewables, and programs such as that.
It is a watershed election.
Hart was considered brilliant, but also a bit aloof.
Smile.
One of my problems is I can't smile and think at the same time.
I was not a traditional politician.
You didn't like having to be charming.
Because I found it very difficult. I wasn't born with charm, the way Bill Clinton was.
You essentially thought that your private life was your private life, and that nobody had a right to look into it.
Hadn't that been the case in America for 200 years? Hadn't that been the case? Who changed the rules?
There were long-running Washington rumors that Hart, who went through 2 separations from his wife, engaged in extramarital affairs. There was a famous question. A reporter asked you if you'd ever been unfaithful in your marriage.
He was so far out of line, I couldn't believe it, and I refused to answer the question.
And you still do.
And I still do, of course. It's nobody's business. Look, character, which got to be the key word, is demonstrated over a lifetime. And I'll put my life up against anybody's in terms of a sound character. That's all I can say.
And now there's new debate over the events of May 1987. A story in The Atlantic this month claims that the late Republican strategist Lee Atwater, who had a reputation as a political dirty trickster, made a deathbed confession, admitting that he had set up a trap to lure Hart onto the monkey business, a setup Hart had long suspected.
Nothing that happened that weekend made any sense to me thereafter, but I had no proof of anything.
Still, he acknowledges he made a big mistake.
I should have gotten on an airplane and gone back to Washington.
You said it was a very painful time in your marriage.
That's pretty obvious.
And you and your wife have now been together 60 years. Congratulations. What kept you together?
Love.
Do you find that lots of people recognize you still?
Well, it depends on where you are.
Hart and his wife returned to Colorado. Their 2 adult children live here too. But he was not in hiding. Over the past 30 years, Gary Hart has built an impressive resume: legal work, consulting, teaching, writing, and diplomacy with expertise in terrorism. He even got a PhD in political thought from Oxford.
I've tried to be active in public service, which is the reason I got into politics in the first place.
The story of Gary Hart's fall is considered a turning point, the moment when the press started examining the private lives as well as the political ideas of candidates.
We're all going to have to seriously question a system for selecting our national leaders that reduces the press of this nation to hunters and presidential candidates to being hunted.
Still, it is not lost on Hart that both Bill Clinton and Donald Trump were elected after allegations of affairs.
I think all the rules have changed. If Donald Trump can have a fan base of 30 to 40%, despite everything he's done in life, all the bets are off. Anybody can be president, regardless.
Gary Hart is about to turn 82, and he admits that he still wonders if he could have changed the course of history. Does that haunt you a little bit, that you didn't get that chance?
It's haunted me for 30 years. Lost opportunities for what turned out to be not very much. Satisfaction of one newspaper with a sensational story. And was it worth it?